One. Welcome back, everybody. My name is Fernando Martinez. I am one of the hosts for the PE's A Conversation With. And with me today, I have
Jefferson Denim.
And Sam Garcia.
Sam. You've been gone for about 2.5 years. Uh,
Just about.
yeah, Jefferson and I were really, really sad.
Oh,
And in the time that you've been gone, we just talked about this before we started recording, but PE has been canceled. Um,
I just heard
yeah.
the news.
yeah, we have a lot of conspiracy theories. Um, you know,
I love those.
yeah, and like I want to make sure this gets to the university. This gets to the department. I have conspiracy theories. Um, what are your initial thoughts after we told you that it got canceled?
I'm so sad. But I think it's just that people are probably being turned away at the idea of the change of platform, from in person to online. And is it really worth it? And all the artists are like, how am I going to get something out of it? Maybe. But I think there's still hope. Like, we still have this, and we still have lots of life ahead of us. And I think it's not over. It's only going to change for the better. And there's room for people to be inspired, especially during this time. So we'll be okay, though that does break my heart.
Yeah, yeah, Jeff, and we're gonna get to the, like what we want to do for today. But last week JD and I were talking about it. Like we spent the whole episode talking about it. Like how it felt, just knowing that it got canceled, what it did for us, what it can do for other people, what it means to have those sorts of programs and classes in universities, right, and in public education. Um, what's funny though is I didn't even think about what you just said, that like people get might be turned off by the idea of performing online, right? And I think a lot of that too comes from people who have not experienced PE. I think that, I feel like if you've done PE, whether it's been the last 2 semesters who people where people did it online or people who did it in person, it's like, yeah, like totally it can still work, right? Like there's so many ways we can,
Exactly.
but
Well,
yeah.
I also want to kind of tag on what Sam said too, that there is room, dare I say, a desperate need for these kinds of expressive platforms. And I think we were talking before we started recording about the all the stories in the news, and personally, we know plenty of mental health issue stories, and so people are contracting, I think, and so that's why I think performance ensemble now more than ever is absolutely necessary, but people may not have know what good it can do for them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think it, I mean, like we said, it's heartbreaking, but
Mhm.
hopefully, I don't know. Obviously, things are going to be changing a lot. We're hearing that, granted, we're still really early in the phases for vaccine spreads, but, things are starting to feel less, um,
Hopeless.
yeah, less hopeless. I feel like there's been a lot of hopelessness. And I know that for some people, a lot of that too was tied with sort of the political stage, right? Because a lot of people felt that too, and whatever the case may be. But yeah,
Hmm.
it feels less hopeless. So yeah, that's a thing. So now we're here, you know, we're doing a lot of work to get people interested, to I guess just inform people about what's happening, what we do, and hopefully next semester we have more people in performance ensemble. And
Right. And
yeah,
I was just listening to a podcast yesterday about civilizations throughout history, and the ones that survive are the ones that are adaptable, that they adapt. They're not stuck in one way of doing things. And I think that is another thing that, okay, even if you're watching this and you're curious about performance ensemble, if you're performance ensemble curious, I think it would be to your benefit to understand that. So sure, performance ensemble is adapting. We have to because of what's going on, but it also teaches you how to adapt and change and draw from an inner strength. I said this last week too,
Yes.
that you don't even know you have. And I think that we doubt ourselves. This is another thing that I love about performance ensemble. It taps into things you don't know you can do, and it shows you rooms, opportunities that you didn't know you had available to you. So that's worth celebrating, especially in times like this, but I would say all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing too, like I think it's perfect timing that you're saying because I feel like that specifically applies to you and because we've discussed this before when I think when you were a guest on the show that like for me it was exciting to have you join PE because I just like Brie and I just felt like you have to be there. Like you have something and you don't even recognize. Like sure, like you like I mean like like you're into music and you're into dancing, you're into all these things, but like you don't even recognize the sort of performativity that you carry and like how powerful that can be for other people. So, you
You
know,
know, can I just say, comment on that? You are so right about that. When I was able to experience performance ensemble with you, with Bree, with Sam, and our whole lovely class, I was thinking about this morning. It felt like, when you're standing at the side of the pool and you're learning to dive for the first time, to do it, you have to leave your feet. And this is what just that idea of there's a sensation of uncertainty because you've left your feet. Your feet are grounded, but now I'm jumping, and then you hope that you dive well. And of course, once you learn how to do it, it's great. But at first, there's that just sensation of I'm losing control. And is everything going to be okay? And again, for anybody listening who hasn't experienced PE, this is one of the great things. I'll just speak for myself. Thank you for alluding to it. Fernando saw me and said, oh, yeah, I bet you he's going to love this. And what I loved most about it was this sensation of coming out of myself to find myself. It sounds very new agey, what I just said, but you get the idea that
Oh
like
yeah.
to take some sort of chance and learn to dive again or something. It was really cool. So thank you, Fernando, for seeing that I would benefit from it and encouraging me to join. And I loved it.
oh yeah, no, yeah, I one of those things about being in PE was, like they really encouraged us to go, and this is probably the wrong word, but like go scouting. That feels like too formal, right? Like it sounds too corporate, but like go scouting for people
Proselytizing,
Loiter.
maybe that's the word.
recognizing how inspirational people can be, I think is what it was, with their art. And so,
I
but
agree.
for me, like I never really went down. It's like, yeah, like I need to get this many people into it. It's like I just want to, if I come across people that have something that I think deserves a
Mm.
platform, they need to be on. So like that was you two. Um, and I think that this is actually a really good sort of transitional moment because it's like we were saying there's a lot of things that we don't recognize we have until we join performance and we actually perform, we create something, we create art, and we allow others to sort of enter that enter our space, right? Because it's such a personal space too. um but
And can I also say this? I just want to say that one of the things I loved in getting to know Sam was watching Sam get reconnected. You also just exude this energy and this love that needs to be expressed. And thank goodness you know how to do it through arts. But you also, and tell me if this is fair to say, you also rediscovered things about yourself that you thought, okay, they're laying dormant, and maybe that'll never happen again. And then again, specifically to our show, when you brought like sort of like a musical theater vibe back to life inside of you, and you're singing and just the music side of you. Is that fair to say that's what PE did for you?
100%, because and I was just actually like mulling that around in my brain before you asked me that question and after Fernando's comment, because if he saw something and I joined just not knowing, just like whatever, oh, it says performance, like let's go. And it's a completely different performance world than I've ever been a part of. But it brought me back to just my core. My core is music, and I have a show choir background, so that's why I was. And also, I've also had a lot of experience, not officially directing things, but being like a lead choreographer or being like this. And I let that sleep for a long, long time when I was in, going to CSUN and getting my life figured out. But when Fernando pulled me over to performance, my inner director came out again, my choreographer came out, my dancer, my singer, because that's what was natural to me. But I wouldn't have peeked at it as soon as I did if I hadn't, you know, been pulled into performance ensemble. And it turned out to be a very, very awakening experience, and very much, and there's just so much love in the room, and I feed off that, and you know, just like Jeff said, and that's just wonderful to hear, guys. Like, thank you.
Yeah, it's funny too, cause like I, cause I think at the time it was just Brie and I that were the what are we called? What were we called?
Assistant? No,
Assistant directors.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we were.
Yes, that's what you guys were.
Yeah.
So it was just like Brie and I, but like I think Brie focused more on working with others, and I focused more on just like paperwork and sending emails
We
out.
had our strengths. We each had our strengths.
Right, right. It was a
And that's not,
team effort.
yeah, and that's not to say that like I wasn't good at it, whatever, like I just like that's what those are the responsibilities I chose to take. But so then to have you come over and fill in that void that we definitely had, like it was just a perfect fit. And that being said, there's a lot of good in doing stuff like this, but there's also a lot of hard moments that come with performing, and I think that one of them definitely is just sort of struggling with yourself when you are trying to create something, or struggling with yourself when you are performing something. And we were I told you guys I sort of wanted to talk about cognitive dissonance and in performance, because I feel like we talk a lot of good, and this is actually a good thing. I was about to call it a bad thing, but it's not. I think it's a good thing.
Mhm.
It seems like it's bad, but it's not, right? It's sort of deceiving. And that's, either performing or being in the audience, and having to consume or perform a belief or a stream of thought that may contradict what people around you believe, or contradict what you believe, or maybe it makes you rethink certain things, right? And so I wanted to start off with JD first. I want to know if there's ever been a moment, like it can be in or outside of PE. I know that you have a lot of just performance as an entertainer, as an actor, as a performer, whatever. Has there ever been a moment where you sort of came across something that, I don't know, contradicted a little bit of what you believed or how you felt at the time?
I would say yes to that. And I'll tell you, that's a great question, by the way. And I think we're seeing writ large a lot of this cognitive dissonance in the political sphere. I don't want to get political, but I will say that when you have a belief system, whether it's a religious belief system, a political belief system, and you don't want to hear any evidence against it, and when something comes at you and you have to deal with it, this is a big, I came from a religious background. That's why I'm bringing that up, I guess. And just I'm looking, it's because I knew we were going to speak about this. So for our audience and for me too, I just wanted to read this thing from Wikipedia. In the field of psychology, cognitive dissonance occurs when a person holds contradictory beliefs, ideas, or values, and is typically experienced as psychological stress when they participate in an action that goes against one or more of them. According to this theory, when two actions or ideas are not psychologically consistent with each other, people do all in their power to change them until they become consistent. I read that, first of all, because I just love dealing with these kind of heavy ideas anyway. I think all three of us do.
Mhm.
And so to get back to your question, yes, when I've played roles that are definitely different than me, and you may have heard this before when you hear about actors playing the bad guy, let's say in a film
Mm-hmm.
or in a play, which I have done. I usually am cast as the heavy. I don't know why. I'm a pretty nice guy, but I think physically you just sometimes. So whenever I would play the heavy, you would have to understand that side of life. And it's many times diametrically opposed to what you think and your sensibilities. But when you try that on, how do I put this? It doesn't justify evil behavior, but it does help you understand where it comes from, right? And so as far as performance is concerned, there's that. And then I'm also thinking too about like when you perform something or when somebody's performing something and it's completely challenging you. And this is what I loved about performance ensemble. We can bring up some pretty heavy topics And I think a lot of people, and anthropology, I think, says this too. We've got filters on, right? Because we can't, if we take in everything all the time, our sensory brains would explode. So we're always filtering out, but sometimes that filtering out filters out something you really should have or need. And so one of the beautiful things about performance ensemble and performance art like it says my internet connection is unstable. Am I still with you?
Yeah.
You're all good. Can you see
Okay.
it?
Yeah, I can see you guys. Okay.
Okay.
So here's a very long-winded answer. I'll try to wrap it up here. But when you're as an audience, not just as a performer, but I know when I've experienced challenging art, it's challenging because it makes you revisit things that you thought maybe I made up my mind about, but maybe you made up your mind too quickly about. It's worthy of revisiting. And so, yes, from a performance point of view, cognitive dissonance is a challenge because you have to try on a life experience that's foreign to you. But also as an audience member, I've appreciated, it's been challenging because it breaks you open. Whenever you feel unsettled by a new idea, it is unsettling for a reason. It's shaking up the foundation of how you think about things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was such a wonderful answer. And I think it's interesting coming from you because, and it's just from the depth of your experiences, I think that you have, on stage or on screen, or even just as an observer, right? As somebody who's witnessing a performance. I feel like I have questions, but I think that I want to go to Sam and see what she has to say, if this is something that she's experienced either as a performer or as an audience member. Was there ever a moment where you sort of had to experience something that contradicts what you feel or what you thought or what you believed at the time?
So I'm struggling to find something to where I personally didn't believe what I was performing or what I was watching, but I did have an experience that may relate here. We had a performance. It was a performance ensemble performance, and I had a friend who watched the show, and they expressed later on that the show made them uncomfortable, and that was probably cognitive dissonance for them, right? And what that did was it created a learning experience because I got to see why did this make you uncomfortable, and then I got to learn about that without judgment, and and then got to explain what I believe in, and kind of just learned from each other. It was kind of just like that. And I think it's a great thing when people are challenged by what they see, especially by art that they see, because there's so many ways to interpret anybody's art. And I just think that we can't learn without challenge, and it's very scary. I've definitely been in situations where my system of thought, my way of thinking, my stream of consciousness was completely, I was exposed to something that completely flipped it upside down, goes against everything that I've ever believed. But I learned from that too. I evolved with that idea and added it to my being, again, long-winded here, but that's probably those are the responses I can access right now based on cognitive dissonance and art.
And you know what, Sam, just to tag on that, you made me think about the following. Tell me what you guys think about this. But cognitive dissonance also attacks absolutism, if that's a word. In
Mm-hmm.
other words, you realize there's a lot more gray area let's say, when you're so certain of your way of thinking, and cognitive dissonance challenges it and shows you that it is never all one thing. We are complicated human beings, right?
It challenges our truth, and that's why and everybody has their own truth, everybody, no matter what system of belief. And there's good, there's bad, but everybody has their own truth, and when that is challenged, that's so scary and threatening. And you know you feel like your world is crumbling because everything you've ever known you feel like is a lie, or something like that. And it's challenging, but I really see the upside of going through that. If you make it through that process and you're able to integrate the new information, and the new perspective that you've learned, then you're on to self-development, I feel.
Yeah,
Preach.
absolutely.
So Fernando, you need an opportunity to answer
Yeah,
this
Yes.
yeah,
question.
yeah.
So as you do, I'm curious to know, and maybe Sam will ask something different too. But have you experienced this sense of cognitive dissonance, certainly in performance, but in your life, where you were one way and then it forced you to become something else?
Yeah, I think I experienced that, but like in sort of a modified way, meaning that I and I'll get to the details of it, but like I performed something that I believed, and it's not that I didn't believe anything else about it. It's just that when something was brought up after I had performed it, I feel like I added to what I knew but didn't really acknowledge much, right? And so, um, I think that a lot of my work is always sort of dedicated to um how I grew up and where I grew up, right? So like location to me is important. I always talk about LA. I always talk about the hood. I always talk about K Town. I talk about, Westlake. I talk about all these areas that I grew up in. Um and obviously when you think of these places, the thing that always comes to mind is gentrification, because that is something that a lot of people you know unfortunately do experience. And so I had performed something about Westlake, and Echo Park specifically, how, and so I obviously, like, I was performing and I wrote things in threes, and so every single paragraph or stanza, whatever, was a lap I would do around Echo Park Lake, and every time I took a lap, it changed and it changed and it changed until it became something I didn't recognize, and so that was the gist of my performance. And it was a really long, typical, like a long performance. It
Just
was
5 pages.
yeah. This one was actually almost 10, I think.
So
Okay.
there was a lot of pacing in the hallway, and you mumbling to yourself,
Yeah, this was in
trying to
the
get
hallway.
out.
This was in the hallway, so you can only imagine how uncomfortable it was, because it was like the sun was still out. So like it was hot.
Right.
It was during the spring, so it was hot. Um
Oh, sweaty.
and so that was yeah, yeah. So that was the gist of my performance, and I think I might have brought this up at some point, but like a member in the audience was I, I they were white passing, but I don't know if they were white or not, right? And the first thing that they said, because like people were applauding the performance and saying good things, and you just feel good and you kind of feel like a star, and you recognize that it shouldn't just be that. Like there might be um constructive criticism that should always be welcome. And so this person comes up and says, "You're talking about gentrification coming from white people," which was never specified. I had never said it was white people, but it did read that way. And she's like, "But what about gentrification that comes from other brown people, that comes from your own people? Like, what about that?" And I think that my initial response was to be upset at that comment. And it's like, okay, well, this is my performance, so like, whatever. Um, and I'm glad that I didn't keep it like that. I was like, okay, you have a valid point, because that's true. I like know that it exists, but I never think about it and I never acknowledge it. And it's insane how often you also see that. And I think that we see that when, I don't know if you guys have heard the phrase buying back the neighborhood. uh,
Hmm.
it's yeah, so like it's like when you, for example, if you're in Lancaster, or if I'm in Koreatown and we leave and we get our degrees and we do this and that, and then we come back, and the money that we make we pour back into our neighborhood, we pour back into our people. That's what buying back the neighborhood means. um but gentrification is also a financial thing. So if you're coming in with a lot of money and you set up things that are expensive, you're gentrifying the neighborhood regardless, even if you think that you're benefiting the people, you're not, right? And so I thought about that. I was like, that happens a lot, and and it's just like it blew my mind. I'm like, okay, well, when I read about this stuff, when I write this stuff, I want to keep that in mind. And so I think that's a moment that I experienced that, right? Like it didn't, um, it wasn't something that I didn't believe, but it was something that I rarely acknowledged. And I think that including it into my bank, I think is what happened. And that was something that I experienced.
Mm.
That's amazing. That's really an amazing point of like learning and, you know, adding to your bank, because it didn't break everything you knew, but it did add to your knowledge so that you can be aware next time and you can, you know, you can learn from it. That's wonderful.
You know, it's also, it reminds me of too, I was reading an interview with Sting, and Sting was saying when you write a song, when you record a song, make an album, whatever, that's just the beginning. What happens is the art expands and flows, and and then it becomes what it's going to become every time you perform it. It's never set in stone. And so, Fernando, you sharing that story with us reminded me of that quote, because what you did was you wrote something down, you performed it, and that was just the beginning.
Mm.
That wasn't the end. That was the beginning of what's going to happen, because art, I believe, is a conversation, right? And so you started the conversation, and whoever was responding to it was continuing the conversation. So we as artists, I think, should not be surprised when we spark a conversation. Isn't that what we're trying to do? And I love when you said for a second you were wrestling with being angry, because that, I think, is our initial response, to get defensive.
Defensive, yeah.
But when we recognize this is just the opening, we're just trying to start a conversation, then anything that happens, any reaction, positive or negative, is just should be expected. And so I love what you shared there, and I love your response to it, because your art, what you shared, and I think all art, is a beginning of a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. That was, you have such wise words every time, JD.
Oh, come on now.
And one specific wise word you said was revisiting. And I think that Sam has something that she wants to revisit because she, was challenged to perform today. And you have something that you want to perform
Oh
for us.
yeah. Just last minute challenge.
Yep,
But
minute challenge.
okay. So, this is, since it was a last minute challenge, I do have a last minute mini performance, and it's really just me reading something that I wrote out of my stream of consciousness last week. It was just flowing, kind of going through a tough time, and I think it might be able to help some people, because these are tough times, and when we think about life in the bigger picture, I think it really, really helps. So this is my interpretation of whatever that might be. So it starts, bloom where you are planted. When you look at a flower, look at the very center. That is where life begins. If you look long enough, you will see the same tiny circle repeated over and over again, spreading out into the world. This is the magic that is weaved through every person, place, thing that we can physically and non-physically sense. The flowers teach us a profound lesson. Life is about growing and weathering the storms that are indeed our experiences. We are made up of the same millions of tiny circles as the flowers. The earth, the elements, and the forces of nature sometimes cause struggles for the flowers to grow. But when they get defeated or die because of the natural cycles of the earth, they come back stronger, more beautiful, healthier. The tiny circles appear again and they regenerate. Everything is a mirror of this cycle. Now look at us, humans. We expand like the flowers from birth to death. We start as a tiny seed and we grow. Nothing is different between us and the flowers. Thank you.
Nice.
That was nice.
I love that. And you know what else we have in common with flowers?
What?
I love to eat Miracle Grow. No, I'm kidding. That would be terrible. It'd be awful for you, right?
A bunch. I'll get you some.
Wow, I love that. I love it because, as we were saying a little bit earlier, as I was saying, like we have all these filters, and you, Sam, with that piece, you made us stop and pay attention to something that's a beauty that's in front of us all the time, but we just don't see it. So
Mhm.
you're awesome.
I'm so glad. Wow, that's all I want is for people to stop and smell the flowers and to notice the small things. So that makes me very happy.
Hey.
It's also interesting seeing how something as simple as, stream of consciousness that you write down is so performative, and I think that's the power of it too. It's like when like when I say that it can be anything, it sort of sounds like, oh, what a waste of like public funding, whatever. But it really is anything. Like you can make anything art, and
Anything.
unfortunate for whoever believes that it is a waste, but you recognize the value in it.
Absolutely. It was actually funny when I wrote it. I was online at an art class with the person I work with, and they were like, I was like, I don't have any paints. I think I'm just gonna write. I'm going through a tough time and I think I just need to release something. And we're all just talking and whatever. And I was just kind of like writing in my periphery, like kind of just, it was just kind of coming out. It was like, it was weird. And then they were like, oh, Sam, I guess you have nothing to share because you didn't have time to write anything because we were just talking. And I was like, oh, I wrote something. And it was just there. And then when they came out, they thought it was a poem. They thought it was, so I didn't even realize that's kind of like what you were saying earlier, Jeff, when performance ensemble like forces you to go inside and pull the inspiration from the inside, the strength, like, because that was my subconscious and other people saw it as art. And that's what things like performance make you do. You just bring the inside out. And sometimes those subconscious activities are really good exercises for like creating art and performance art.
Yeah, what I love about it, and this is kind of what you were alluding to too, Fernando, is that stream of consciousness doesn't, it disengages your inner critic.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like the inner critic is the enemy of art. And so, Sam, when you tapped into your subconscious, the inner critic didn't have time to respond. It was all flowing over their head.
Yeah, my truth just was like move out of the way, basically. My truth,
Right.
like that's whatever that piece was came from the core of me.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Thank you
wonderful
guys.
sub for a last minute performance. Um, and I think it's time to move on to Jefferson.
Okay.
I
So
believe.
I haven't written anything recently. So I went back into the archives. I was just like searching around. And so this is the first thing that popped up. So I'm just going to share it with y'all.
Yay.
This piece is called Something to Burn. Tall tales, hay bales, altar calls, and holy grails. Half-hearted angels sipping coffee spiked with gin. They're days from retirement, so they're just phoning it in. Shining the silver with the prayers of St. Francis, indulgence is paid for heaven's electric fences. And between the monasteries and the convents beneath the shadow of pretense are buried the bones of all the children that were born from abstinence. Violin concertos played at Carnegie Hall, dreaming of the girl you met outside Woodfield Mall. Cue the planetarium to turn off the light and let the machinery turn day into night. Film strips and field trips to watch an electric rickshaw ride past the slums and the insurance red lines we draw. Waiting for the big reveal to take me away, but still nothing comes, just another relentless day. So gather up your hopes and dreams, my friend. This is something you just learn, that living can leave you freezing and you might need something to burn.
A true poet.
That was so beautiful, Jeff. That was so you and so that came from your core. I know that came from your core.
Not, and it feels like it's funny when you release stuff like that, because obviously it's much darker, Sam, than what you shared.
That's different,
But getting it out feels better, right? But yeah, it's kind of a, anyway, thank you.
absolutely. That was you, transmuting your pain and your maybe cognitive dissonance into an art form. And it's really beautiful and healing.
Mm, it is, it is. So Fernando, we
Yeah,
got to hear from the man, the spoken
Gotta hear
word
from the man.
poet man himself.
I wanna caveat by saying, I wanna caveat by saying that I intended this to be a 10-word thing, and it happens, it doesn't happen, it's cool.
I can't count to 10. I would have to go
It's
I don't know. Anyway, go ahead.
yeah. So I want to read a block of something I wrote a while ago, a long time ago actually. Um, Change is walking back home at 2 in the morning down the block of a well kept church. This is no longer a church, it is a home, a mirror image of what it is like to no longer have a home. I've never heard of such painful irony.
Hmm.
So you. I
That is you, brother.
I love it. You always you're like in your core, you are so like connected to the places that you have been and that have influenced you. Your environment is so influential and in such an artful way.
Yeah, it and I think something that I want to highlight about what we all did is just how we come across the things that we want to talk about, right? Like how we experience those things and why we choose to write them. Like and then maybe this is something that you guys can share about what you guys wrote if you remember. I mean, Sam, you were sort of explaining why you wrote yours, but um, if you want to explain more, JD. But with mine, like it was a mixture of two things. It's like coming home at 2 in the morning after a night of partying with your friends, and sort of noticing things because maybe you're not all there, but you still notice these things. And it was also coming home late at night from school because like I don't drive, so like I have to take public transportation. It takes a long time to get home, and I come home really late sometimes, or would come home really late sometimes. And you also notice these things because the rest of the city is asleep, and you just kind of have to walk it home. So it's funny how you can just grab sort of mundane experiences, right? Because like coming home from a party seems so like dime a dozen. Like that's just you experience that so much, and coming home late from work or from school, everybody experiences that too. So
Hmm.
I don't know if you guys want to talk a little bit about how I don't know those experiences just sort of led to you writing what you wrote.
Okay, well, I'll just say that I think, like you both, you're kind of you're kind of like a reporter. Like you're off in Afghanistan and you're reporting to the public what you're seeing. And so for me, I'm always on a journey through depression. I'm in and out of that. That's just my reality. And so when I write stuff, it's kind of like describing what I see. Not unlike Fernando, what you're saying, you're taking a walk down a neighborhood. However, my neighborhood is filled with depression. And through that filter is how life comes at me. And because I'm a soldier, I'm a veteran of these wars, sometimes you just know how to cognitively say, don't give it too much weight. It's just depression having its way with you. And other times you like sink and you can't. So it's always a battle. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But so for the thing that I read, um, you know, the cognitive dissonance, Sam, you were saying that there's cognitive dissonance that I think we all struggle with. And mine was being steeped in religion for a good amount of years. And then coming out of that because you just see so much, you see what you view to be hypocrisy in a faith system that you invested your whole being into. What do you do then? I remember when I left my faith system, I had no other friends. I had no other way of looking at life. So you had to completely start over. And that's daunting, when you're challenged like that. So uh, that's why when I look at these words, again, these were kind of stream of consciousness too, Sam. So,
Mhm.
but I can, looking back on it now, and I hadn't really before, so thank you for challenging me, Fernando. I hadn't really looked at it, but that's kind of what I'm thinking is happening here with what I wrote.
Yeah, absolutely. Sam, do you have any words? Any comments?
Yeah, I guess I'll go ahead and, kind of just um go and say that I was extremely depressed when I wrote this. It was probably one of the most like undone that I've ever been, and kind of like just like really depressed and very very hopeless and in a lot of emotional pain.
Mm,
And this came out as such like beautiful positive poetry, and I think it's because that my default is positive. I'm like a half glass. The glass is half full. Like I'm always at my core positive. But when depression hits me, it hits me really hard, and you I think art is the only way that pulls me out of it. And I feel like it's almost like it's not even me. It's like when I wrote this, it's kind of like a divine message speaking through me to help me out of that that insufferable pain. Does that make sense? It got a little dark, but that's
Oh, I live in the dark, baby. I have
oh yeah.
infrared glasses. I totally get this.
Yes. I get you, Jeff.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of what room it gives us to sort of, I think, become and unbecome, right? Like there's just so many parts of us that I think we have to learn to let go, and a lot of parts that we have to learn to adapt and gain. And I think that's what it's doing for you, Sam, and I'm glad that that's what it's doing for you. I'm also just really happy that you're, you know, be it because it came from a situation in work, right? Like it happened through your job, but I think I'm just happy to see you, you know, dabble into your creativity again, because I don't recognize how powerful you are, especially when you perform or you do something creative. It does so much for you. It does a lot for a lot of people. Obviously, like it resonates with JD and I. So just imagine what it can do for you. You know, if you really focus on you. So
Thank you.
yeah, I wanted to say thank you to you both for participating in this very last minute, very heartfelt
Mm.
challenge. I think, with that being said, I'm really excited to sort of close this one out, and also just like let everybody know that next week we do have the queen of performance coming on the show.
Hold on. I got to give you the there. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, next week we're gonna have Jade on the show, so it's gonna be exciting that we get to sort of like poke her, you know, and ask her all the questions that we've
I
had.
cannot wait.
Jade, what the
She
hell?
is the queen. Wait, I got another one because it's a party when we get to talk to
You
Jade.
didn't get it.
I think it's a party. Can you not see my
I can't
party?
see the party.
I
Take
can,
my word for it. It's a party.
I can
It's a
see.
party.
Yeah. Um, so thank you everybody for joining us today on this second episode of our second season. Um, where we welcome Sam back. My name is Fernando Martinez. I am one of the hosts of the show.
My name is Jefferson Denham. I'm another host.
My name is Samantha Garcia, and I've been MIA, but I'm a host again.
Thank you for coming
Woo!
back to a conversation with. All right, I think this is the part where we wave.
See you next time.